Hello everybody, we just finished watching the 13th and final episode, for now, of the Bleach 1000-Year Blood War arc. And because we have gotten this far to 13 episodes, I think I should finally say that it's time to talk about it, right? So, the housekeeping stuff, let's go through that. This is episode number 379 of Bleach overall. The episode titled is The Blade Is Me. 13th episode of the 1000-Year Blood War arc, and this episode covers chapters about 537.8 to like 542.8, right? A bunch of .8s in there, and I'm a little upset that the final episode here of the season, or the first core, I should say, isn't an even end of a chapter, but we'll get into all of it as it goes on. So this episode covers about 5 chapters, and the way that these 5 chapters are covered is it's pretty much straightforward in order, but there is about 1 or 2 things that are a bit out of order just to build up the suspense with the end of the episode, especially pretty much happening in a manga where the beginning of this episode is. So pretty much we ended off last episode with Ichigo learning his past and being like, hey, alright, I'm going to the Soul Society again, right? And especially to go see Naima after everything that happened last time, right? This episode starts off in that same exact place with Ichigo being like, I'm going, and Ishin makes the comment of, how are you doing that? As Mera, the one girl who was with Naima earlier, just pops in out of nowhere, just picks Ichigo up, and Ichigo is now back in the pit where him and Renji originally did the Asauchi finding training sort of thing, right? And Oetsu is here, and he's like, oh, Ichigo, you're finally back. Have you learned? As Ichigo is now standing there, and none of the Asauchi are really moving around him. And the thing is, Ichigo seems to know what he's doing now. He walks as all of the Asauchi kneel on the ground in front of him, and what he ends up doing is he ends up going, and there's one kneeling, and he reaches out his hand, and there's a handshake, and as this handshake happens, this black Asauchi turns white and takes on the appearance of a hollow. And Oetsu's just like, oh, interesting. Well, we've made a deal. Because of what you've just done, I'll forward your news on Pakuto for you. And at this point, we get the opening Scar by Tatsuya Kitani playing. This was most likely the last time that we'll hear Scar, because I'm guessing there's going to be a new intro for each core. And because this opening has been here for so long and for 13 episodes, I'd say we're done with it. And this opening has been really good, been a good opening to sort of have around this entire time, and I can't really complain about it. So yeah, it's definitely grown on me a lot. At the beginning, I wasn't really into it, and I think listening to the full version of the song really helped me get into it. But overall, it's just a really good opening that you can't go wrong with. Now, this next part is all about all of the captains sort of training, and I'll talk about it as we get into it. But this section was a bit ordered weird. This was about halfway through all the chapters and not at the beginning, as these are right now, for instance. So we open up seeing Toshiro, right? Toshiro's walking around, and he walks into the sword training part of the 10th Division. And he talks to the leader there, who's like, oh, Captain Itsugaya, why are you here? And Toshiro's just like, hey, I need you to train me. My Bankai was stolen, something that I spent so long perfecting that I barely know how to not use it. I need to learn the basics of sword fighting to even have a chance to do anything. We didn't see Shuhei and, what's the guy's name? I don't remember. But he's the guy who's now the squad leader of the 9th Division. Oh my gosh. Kinjiro? No, not Kinjiro. That's the... Oh my gosh. I don't remember his name. I'll put it up on screen with a picture of him. I don't know why I'm forgetting his name. But he's one of the Visored captains, right? Who's not Shinji and who's not Rose. He's the other one. oh man, I'm a little disappointed. But he's talking to Shuei, and he's like, hey, we don't know. My Bankai could be stolen next in the next invasion. So we need to perfect your Bankai so that next time this stuff happens, you can actually fight, and our division won't be toast, pretty much. We see that Akone is walking in, he's all bandaged up. He's walking into the Squad 12 barracks again, into Research and Development Capital. And there's a note that Kurosuchi and Nemo haven't come out of his office in what feels like 24 hours, 48 hours, right? Ever since this invasion ended. And Akone looks at a camera that he planted in Kurosuchi's office and sees that Kurosuchi is modifying his Bankai to something even worse and more terrible, right? He's creating a new Bankai just like Ashishoshi Jizo can do, as we've seen in the past. Next we go to Omaida, who's sort of like, oh man, my captain didn't take me with her, out of a thing with like some of his family. It's something that's sort of there, it's fine, but Omaida's like, and she didn't take me with her to train, as we see Suifan training up on a hilltop, being that of course she did lose her Bankai, so she has to learn how to fight again without it, just like Toshiro had to do. And at the end we cut to Komamura, right, who has gone to see who he calls Great Elder. And we see that Great Elder is this giant sort of dog. Of course, we know that Komamura takes the appearance of a dog, and he is one. But we see this massive dog overall, who apparently is the Great Elder of Komamura's race. And Komamura asks Great Elder, I want to learn the clan's secret technique. And there's this big debate that happens between the two of these guys, Great Elder and Komamura, about like rules and values and things like that. There's a big massive point of like, hey, you covered your face, you did all of this, so why should I teach you the clan's secret technique if you almost didn't want to go with the clan? And Komamura makes these things of how the world's a different one today, about how his tribe can go out into the world and how things have all changed, right? And there's a big notice of that throughout the entire thing, until eventually it seems like Great Elder and Komamura are going to fight for Komamura to get all of this going on, right? And he's like, alright, I'll take you on. Next we see Ichigo falling into this big open area with his Asuchi and with Oetsu. And as this happens, pretty much it's this area inside a lot of ocean, and we learn that there's a lot of water that goes into making a Zanpakuto. It's sort of a cooling process, being that it's a forged object in a way, right? And as we see Oetsu sort of explain all of this, he starts to take the Asauchi, and he says, hey, Ichigo, where was it? I messed up. He's like, hey, you're about to need to say goodbye to Zangetsu as we get the episode break. At this point, we meet Namaya bodyguards, who are pretty much the ones who help Oetsu forge Zanpakutos. So pretty much what happens is the Asauchi turns into this white, glowing mass of a, of a blade, and starts flying around, almost hits Ichigo, right? And pretty much we get the idea that each of these 5 Namaya bodyguards each have a aspect that they help in with forging a sword. We see the first one sort of cuts this spiral forging shaft to get air down. Her name is Nonomi Nomiro, right? Pretty much Mera, who we know before. Mera Hiyuchigashima, right? Big name there. She conjures flame to actually like make a fire to help melt the blade or whatever. For this water which is needed, we meet Toki Tonakawa. She does water for the stuff. Then we meet Hasuka Hashihara, who is pretty much the person who grabs the blade. She grabs it with her hair and holds it down over the fire to let Oetsu beat it. And then we get Tsukimo Tsuchimiya, right? She yanks a tooth out of her mouth and makes this tooth in like a tooth hammer, which she gives to Oetsu for Oetsu to forge a blade, right? And Oetsu takes off his glasses to get ready to do all of this. And just an interesting thing to know, as we've learned, everybody here is a Zanpakuto. So of course, all of these 5 characters, they're all Zanpakuto, which Oetsu had created to make his life easier doing this. Just a little interesting note that I find very interesting about this whole process as a whole, as we see, right? Oetsu starts to forge a blade, and we get this idea of why Ichigo's Asauchi turned white, and we understand because it is a hollow, and of course it's the hollow that is inside Ichigo. And this entire time, Ichigo's sort of been freaking out because he's like, oh no, Zangetsu, I gotta leave Zangetsu, what's going on? As we sort of get the whole idea behind this. So, Ichigo's Zanpakuto is white, right? As we know, well, let me say this. Pretty much how it's all explained is that the way that Aizen made the white hollow that we've seen with Masaki and Ishin's backstory, he did that by layering multiple layers of souls into a blade. We understand that that is the same way Asauchi are made, right? So pretty much what happened is Aizen created white, right? Using the same method as an Asauchi, right? It then infected Masaki, which then infected Ichigo with it. And at this point, we understand that Ichigo's Zanpakuto is actually white itself. And we get this idea of somebody has pretended to be Zangetsu inside of Ichigo's soul. Because if white, the hollow that we've always seen Ichigo train with, if that is his real Zanpakuto, who is Zangetsu? And this big idea is revealed that Zangetsu is actually Yhwach from 100 years ago. So Zangetsu is actually Ichigo's Quincy powers. And we pretty much understand. So, yeah, I know I'm not really doing a good job of explaining this, but pretty much Ichigo has 2 sort of souls living within him, as we find out. He has White, the Hollow, and we have Zangetsu, or as we learned, Yhwach from 1,000 years ago, who is his Quincy powers, right? And pretty much in Ichigo's inner world, it starts to rain, and there's this big thing, of course, as we've seen inside of Ichigo's inner world. Whenever things get unstable, it starts to rain and water fills up everything as buildings crack and everything, right? And Ichigo is sort of like, so are you Zangetsu? What's going on? And pretty much Yhwach says, I am Zangetsu, but at the same time, I'm not. But I'm not Yhwach either. I'm something different, right? I'm Yhwach some, but I'm not totally Yhwach, right? And Ichigo's just like, alright, whose side are you on? Are you on my side? On the side of Quincy's? Right? What's your affiliation here? Or have you lied to me? And Zangetsu says, no, I am neutral in every way. And no, I have not told you one lie besides my name. Right? And Zangetsu Yhwach here sort of says, have you always found it interesting why there's been a hollow here every time you've tried to train and grow your Zanpakuto stronger in a way, right? And he pretty much says that, yes, the hollow is his Zanpakuto. It is his Zanpakuto altogether. And Yhwach is just those Quincy powers. And Yhwach also says that he has suppressed Ichigo's true power inside him, right? Because in his, sort of heart, he did not want Ichigo to get hurt. And he knew that if Ichigo ended up becoming a Soul Reaper, that eventually his current incarnation, the Yhwach that Ichigo had to fight earlier, would end up killing Ichigo, and that was the last thing that this Yhwach wanted to happen, right? And he's like, I did not want to kill you with my own hands, right? But our hearts are easily swayed, and after seeing everything that you've done, beating Aizen, helping Rukia, helping Orihime, and just doing everything you've done as a Soul Reaper, it's changed my heart and made me want to be more open and more accepting of everything. As he's like, I am satisfied with this. As this Zangetsu apparition starts to fade away, as we sort of see this idea of a sword forming in the ice, sort of showing of a Quincy blade that Yhwach used earlier, right? And the Yhwach, as he's fading away, is pretty much, hey, you've only been using a fragment of your power. And he's like, take this sword and fight with your true power, which is, of course, all of his spiritual pressure and these Quincy powers that Ichigo has now awakened, right? And pretty much Yhwach's like, go on, take it and forge your true Zanpakuto. Take Zangetsu. As we see Ichigo thinking in his mind, he's like, at this point, I don't care who Zangetsu is. And he sort of makes this proclamation of, I found it weird why I knew Yhwach was the strongest whenever I got to the Soul Society. Why didn't I go anywhere else? Why was I drawn to him? And I know why now. And he's sort of like, I always knew there was an uncanny sort of semblance between the two, but now I truly knew why, and it makes a whole lot of sense. And it's this thing here of where Ichigo's like, I don't care who Zangetsu is. White, the Hollow, Yhwach, the Quincy, it doesn't matter at all. As we say, he's just like, you two will have to agree to disagree. I have two Zanpakuto spirits inside me. As we see back in the present world, Ichigo has stuck his hands into the fire where Uetsu is forging his new Zanpakuto, right? And all of the Nemaya bodyguards are like, what are you doing? You're going to burn yourself. But Uetsu's like, it's fine, it's fine. It wouldn't be his Zanpakuto if a little bit of his spiritual pressure, right? As we see that Ichigo is now using these two swords and conjuring them all up together, as he's just like, alright, I now have Zangetsu. As the entire sea around him evaporates, as Ichigo just calls out this massive spiritual pressure and power, as we see that Ichigo has two swords. One sword representing the Quincy inside him, and one sword representing the Hollow. And Ichigo thinks, you know what, Zangetsu? I'm no longer willing to make any deals. Ask for your power. Ask for anything whatsoever. Because here's the thing, Zangetsu, my blade, you and me are the same. The blade is me. As at this point, I haven't really mentioned, but this entire time, Ichigo's theme, number 1, and especially this remix version for the 1,000 Year Blood War is playing as the credits roll around it, right? And we get this great, insane moment of just Ichigo pulling out his two blades and having this inner dialogue with himself, right? It's a really cool and good moment, and truly shows how much effort Piro has been putting into this production of Bleach, right? And especially this return. It's truly great, and it's just amazing. I don't really know what to say. After this, we cut to the end of episode poem, and we get that, it happens, and we cut to an after credits scene where we see Yhwach, who of course we know more about being that Zangetsu and everything, and we see Hashwolf come up to him, right? And Hashwolf is just like, I've brought him, your majesty. As we see Uryu Ishida, our main Quincy character we've known throughout the entire series, going up and joining the Stern Ritter and joining Yhwach's cause. And that's the end of the episode. This episode was a great end to this sort of segment of Bleach that we have got. These first 13 episodes were really great, and ending on this moment here with Ichigo having his new true Zanpakuto is absolutely a brilliant move, and it's great. No matter what you think of where Bleach goes on from here, I think we can all agree this first part of this anime has been done beautifully. we're seeing all these characters get developed in a way that we really have seen, but we haven't seen in a long time. And just the development is really working to cause a great thing. So, being that there won't be an episode next week or anything like that, we are actually going to be waiting till July to get part 2 of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, titled Separation. Next week on the channel, you're going to see a breakdown of where I go through the trailer and just talk about it and sort of talk about what I think this section will cover in terms of manga. And after that, for the future of this Bleach series in a way, once all of the dubbed episodes come out, I'm going to rewatch all of those and sort of do a retrospective of how this first core was, and and give it a sort of number score there. Overall, this episode was really good. I can't complain. Again, just to rehash everything, this was episode number 379 of Bleach overall, episode 13 of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, and it was titled "The Blade Is Me." And yeah, that's everything I've got to say. If you enjoyed this, and if you've enjoyed this series and have checked it out through everything, I thank you very much. And with that, I'll see you next time. And this is Glowplasma231 out.